Before we get into anything, I'd like to ask for a moment of silence, and then I'll ask Sue to say a prayer, if she will. All right, so we'll go for a moment of silence right now, please. It's unspeakable tragedies we've seen in the last few days, and I hope that it's going to change. Before I start, we'll, just want to give you a little bit of information on how we started this. Last fall, actually, Adam Gedudis and the chair of the Pembroke Republican Party and I had a discussion on what we can do. All right, with the help from many individuals, we are here today, hosted by Duxbury, Weymouth, and Pembroke RTCs, and joined collectively with a common purpose. That is to find the right candidate who will direct Massachusetts politics to a sustainable economy and in a common sense future. So before we begin, I'd like to ask that you stand, we'll play the national anthem, and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. If I can get this to work properly. While you're standing, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. And you can sit down. Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, thank you. Please take your seat, please. First of all, I'd like to recognize we've got a couple of VIP folks. Sandy Wright, Plymouth County Commissioner and Chair. And we have Alex Higgity, State Committee Man. And I've been told that there's a few more that may be able to make it a little later, so we'll see. So today we gather for change. With President Donald Trump at the helm, we have an opportunity to return to basic common sense values and regain control of our state. We've long endured the promises of politicians and watched as the progressive left supported a criminal justice system that is soft on crime. Under the leadership of Governor Maura Healey, with the right to shelter law and sanctuary state status, Massachusetts has become a magnet state for illegal aliens. This is an unacceptable burden that is draining the state budget, increased tax burden on citizens, and causing many businesses to leave the state. With the MAGA agenda, we now have a path to succeed in Massachusetts. Tonight, I ask you to listen and ask questions as to how our gubernatorial candidates, Mike Kenneally and Brian Shortsleeve, and I appreciate the distance that some of them have to travel, and appreciate you being here. Thank you. Now, I said it earlier, but I want a shout out for the RTCs. This is a 3 RTC effort. We had Adam Gatudas, Lynn from Pembroke, Lynn Santangelo from Weymouth, and myself to bring in such a large group. And I think that we got to thank Adam and Lynn for their contributions here. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Sue to get up and as the moderator. Sue is very active in Duxbury and shares the Freedom Rings action group. So if you have any questions, Sue's going to go through the moderator questions, and then there will be questions taken from the floor. So the process there was to get those cards that you saw when you signed in and bring them down to this table here, and we'll try to get your questions answered as well. So we want to spend as much time as possible hearing from the candidates. So here you are, Sue.
I'm Sue Schofield from Duxbury. This is obviously a very dark day in America. In light of that, let's pray. Saint Michael, the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our defense against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly hosts, by the power of God, thrust into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. And may God open his arms and welcome Charlie Kirk into the heavens above. And may his family find some peace. And may all of us continue on into his work. Amen.
Amen.
Hi, gentlemen.
Hi.
May I call you Mike and Brian?
Of course.
Terrific. Can you call me Sue? Just not John, Kevin, Mike, or Matt. Those are my brothers. So, here come the glasses. So wow, look at this turnout. People in Massachusetts are ready for serious change in Beacon Hill. Let's keep the red wave rolling right here on the South Shore. Only 418 days until Maura Healey is fired. So some of you are not registered Republicans, but your values have been stomped on, and just by showing up tonight and attending, you are making a difference. My name's Susan Schofield. Some of you may know me through my work with Freedom Rings with my pal Lynn Greenwood. Tonight I see many familiar faces, which is terrific. But what I'm really thrilled about are all the new people. The energy in the room is quite frankly contagious, even on a difficult day like today. So, to be honest with you, I did not want to moderate. I'm exhausted, and I just want to ignore politics and live life. Do I dare say, move to Florida? But if not me, then who? So consider that when asked to get involved. Many of us working together will get the job done. Welcome to the Republican candidates for governor meet and greet sponsored by the Duxbury, Pembroke, and Weymouth Republican Town Committees. Thank you, Mike Kenneally and Brian Shortsleeve, for coming and giving the voters an opportunity to get to know you and your policies. The order of speaking will be alphabetical with opening statements limited to 5 minutes, please. Closing statements to 3 minutes, and answers to my questions 1 minute. The timekeeper is sitting up front here. She has a paddle, it says 15 seconds, and then please wrap up when you see the stop card. If time allows, we will take questions from the audience. Please submit written questions to the registration desk. I don't know who's collecting them over there. And then, please, everyone, you see this device? I'm gonna shut it off. I'm gonna turn the volume down. Perhaps you would do the same. Thank you. Alrighty, so Mr. Kenneally, since we are beginning alphabetically, will you please begin with your opening statement?
I'm happy to, Sue. Thank you so much, and great to see everybody here today. Can folks hear me okay? I do just want to pause and take a moment to reflect on the horrible events of today and all that Charlie Kirk did for our party and our cause, and just say, obviously, there's no place in politics for political violence. Okay, that's better. I always start a speech to Republican groups by saying those two words, thank you, because this is a team sport. And I want to thank and acknowledge all the work people in this room do to make our party and our candidates strong and competitive. I had the privilege of being the party's finance chair for 2 years, the single largest donor to our party and its candidates and its causes over this 2-year period of time. And I've been telling everybody, I want to be the governor. Oh my God, here we go.
All right.
Is that better? Yeah. Just take it out here. I want to be the governor of all the people, but I will be the Republican governor of Massachusetts. And my work with you to make our party strong will never stop. By way of introduction, I'm a son of Massachusetts, raised in Medford and Reading. My mom took care of 4 kids. My dad worked at a place called Northern Steel in Medford, was a member of the local steel workers union, put himself through 9 years of night school at Bentley College, got an accounting degree, went on to become the CEO of Roach Brothers Supermarkets. So I grew up watching my dad go from the factory floor to the CEO suite. I watched my dad's college graduation, a proud moment in both of our lives. But that's how I was raised, hard work, faith in family, and determination. I had my own career in business, 19 years in the private equity business. I traveled to 40 states. I met with 1,000 companies. Our firm invested in 100 businesses. We built companies. We created jobs. Along the way, married a wonderful woman, raised 3 great kids, served on our finance committee in Lexington. Let me tell you, being the only Republican on the finance committee in Lexington was quite an experience. Learned a lot about local government, coached 39 of my kids' sports teams. But I decided at the age 45, what I wanted to do for the rest of my career was public service and serve the people of Massachusetts. I then have spent the last 12 years full-time in public service to our state. In early 2013, I joined the team in Lawrence to turn around the public schools. We cut the bureaucracy by 40%, put those dollars in the classroom, introduced a whole set of innovative new programs, brought parents and teachers and the community together. And the high school graduation rate at Lawrence High School when we started was 52%. And 2 years later was 72%. And those kids in Lawrence today have a much better future because of the work of our team. I spent 8 years in state government, 4 years as a cabinet secretary, the Secretary of Housing and Economic Development. I took much the same approach to our work, this kind of reform agenda of restructuring agencies, consolidating programs, and traveling the state relentlessly to get things done, build a set of relationships around the state that can help me win and help me govern. We built infrastructure, introduced new workforce programs, looked after our small businesses, and when it was all said and done, there were 230,000 jobs created in Massachusetts during that time. It was a good time in our government and our economy. My last 2 years were spent the Boys and Girls Clubs of Boston, helping those kids in Roxbury and Dorchester and Mattapan realize their dreams. And then April 7th of this year, I announced my campaign for governor. And we're out here every day making 2 points. One is that Maura Healey's got to go. Okay? And the second is I believe I've got the experience and the track record to defeat her with my experience in business, local government, education, and state government. The next governor has got to do a few things very importantly. They have to declare in no uncertain terms that we're not a sanctuary state. They've got to cut taxes. Thank you. They have to cut taxes and cut spending and get this budget under control. They've got to cut energy costs, get the green gimmicks off our energy bill, have a real energy policy, not a climate agenda. The governor has to have practical solutions to solving a housing crisis, not mandates and threats against our cities and towns. This is what has to be done. And we have to return to an education strategy which is based on standards, accountability, innovation. It's a big task. There's a lot on the plate for the next governor, but I know I can do the job based on my experience across business and education and government. I look forward to a great discussion today, and thank you so much for being here. Thanks to the organizers. We talked about Republican politics being a team sport. This is what it looks like. It's wonderful to be here today. Thank you so much.
And also, I appreciate all the applause, but it cuts down on their time to speak, so keep that in mind.
Well, thank you so much. How's the volume? Sounds like you guys can hear me. I'll also just start with disbelief about Charlie Kirk's murder. Just awful, awful. You know, what an incredible leader from a young age, by the way. He was 31 years old. I remember watching him 10 years ago when he was in his 20s, and he's got young kids. So terrible evening, and all the best to his family, his wife, those kids. Look, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Brian Shortsleeve. I'm the founder of a firm called M33 Growth in Boston. I've spent my life, after getting out of business school 25 years ago, working with small businesses, helping them scale, helping them grow. We invest in small companies, 20, 25 employees. We scale them up. I spent 2 years on a mission for Charlie Baker at the MBTA, and I'll talk about some of the lessons from that a little later. That was back in 2015 and 16 after Snowmageddon. But for me, more than anything, I'm a Marine. And it's really my experience as an officer in the Marine Corps that has driven who I am, how I think, how I approach problems. When I was growing up, my grandfather, Ted, was my hero. He was a Naval Academy grad who served in World War II. And when my time came to serve, I joined the Marine Corps after getting out of Harvard. And I can tell you, I went into Harvard a conservative, and I came out even more conservative. Being the only Republican at Harvard's a little bit like being a Red Sox fan in Yankee Stadium. You're allowed to exist, but people aren't very happy you're there. And by the way, I was at ROTC. I was at Harvard when the left-wing mob that ran the place in those days was trying to terminate all relationships with the military. I took that very personally because I was on an ROTC scholarship. And in that era, there was a big push for the university to end all relationships with the military. That was one of my first big political fights. We won that fight. ROTC's still going at Harvard. I think for me personally, the most important lessons I learned about life and leadership I learned in the Marine Corps. Core values of the Marine Corps: honor, courage, commitment. Marines are the first in, last out, get the job done, no excuses. That is leadership. It's leadership in the business world, it's leadership in the military, it's leadership in government. I'm in this race because our state is desperately in need of new leadership. When you look at what Maura Healey has done to Massachusetts over a short period, it's only been 3 years, but look at that Healey record. I mean, start with taxes. She ran on the largest tax hike in state history, which was the graduated income tax. This year alone, she proposed 5 new taxes, some real whoppers in there, like a surtax on top of your auto excise tax, a tax on your cable box, a tax on candy. At every step of the way with Healey, it's tax, tax, tax. Her energy policies have been a disaster. You stare at an electricity bill today that's probably doubled over the last 3 years, and that's got nothing to do with the cost of natural gas. It has to do with all those state mandated fees that are running through your bill. So when you look at Massachusetts today, taxes are too high, electricity bills are too high, and every single thing that Maura Healey does is making that worse. And look at the results. You know, this was the fastest growing state in the entire Northeast from 2010 to 2020. Fastest growing state. When Charlie Baker was governor, this state added 300,000 private sector jobs. We have not added a single private sector job in this state in 3 years. We're now 49th out of 50. We're the only state in the country that had more businesses close in 2024 than open in 2024. So think about where we are as a state around the trajectory of our private sector. And look, the private sector matters, right? I've spent my life building businesses. You need a vibrant private sector to pay the bills. If your private sector is growing, it means people are coming to your state. You're a good place to do business. If it's shrinking, it means you're a bad place to do business. And Healey's spending is completely off the rails. I mean, look at her spending on the migrant crisis, $3.3 million a day. I mean, think about that. We're at the $3 billion mark spent on that program over the last 3 years. That does not include indirect expense to the schools, to the 270,000 folks that are part of Mass Health today. All of those costs are in addition to that core $3 billion. She's putting folks now into the home base program. I mean, the home base is a free rental apartment voucher program. It used to be $20 million a year. It's now at 100. So in the aggregate over the past 3 years, there's probably $4 to $5 billion of spending. And I tell you what, for that amount of money, you could give every city and town in this state $15 million. So when I'm governor, we're going to turn that around. We will cut taxes, we will end the migrant shelter crisis, we'll strip all those fees out of your utility bill, and we'll get this state moving again. I'm getting the red paddle, so I think I've hit my time. I think I've hit my 5 minutes.
Thank you.
So, I didn't share with you, we did not provide the questions ahead of time to anybody. I only gave the questions to 2 other people, and my poor husband had to hear them, so. So, gentlemen, I'm gonna start with you, Mike, and then we'll go to Brian, and then we'll switch the order of the next question. So, election integrity is a key issue for many voters, with many asking, why bother to vote, since they believe there is widespread fraud, serious issues with mail-in ballots, and distrust of the voting machines. Do you support one day of voting, and do you support photo voter ID?
What's the first? Support.
Yes, so election integrity, so do you support one day of voting, and do you support photo voter ID?
I would much rather see us vote on election day.
Can I hear you?
I'll get this mic down eventually, folks, I apologize. I definitely support everyone voting on election day. It's what I've always done personally. I'm kind of old-fashioned in that regard, I guess, but I wish people could just vote on election day, show up and vote. Voter ID, yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is, someone used the term common sense already. That may as well be the platform for our campaign is common sense. I mean, come on, how could you be against voter ID? I look at so much happening now in state government today, and it's just a deviation from common sense, right? The same, we should have boys playing on girls' sports teams, right? But we can't have that. This gun bill that we have to repeal, that's not common sense, right? Voter ID, that's not common sense. How about this one? They want to change the state flag. I mean, come on, right? So getting back to common sense policies, but to answer your question, I'm a firm believer in the election day is election day, and a firm believer in voter ID. Thank you.
Do you need me to repeat the question?
I've got the question, and I am a strong supporter of voter ID. By the way, the Dems have their state convention this weekend, and guess what you're going to need to go in and register as a delegate to the Democratic State Convention? Can anyone guess? A voter ID. How about that? Amazing. You know, my kids go to the library. I need an ID for my library card. You can't even buy Sudafed when you have a cold at CVS. Can you, volume okay?
Yep.
You guys can hear me? Yeah, you can't even go to CVS and get like Sudafed for your cold without an ID. So I think, to me, it's a no-brainer. It's common sense. And it is one in a long list of things where I think Maura Healey is way out of step with voters. We should have voter ID. We should audit the legislature. I mean, think about that. How many people in this room voted for the audit? I think I know the answer. I mean, 72% of the people voted for that audit, and we're getting completely blown off at every step of the way. Auditor DiZoglio, to her credit, has done a couple little baby audits of things like the Mercedes cab contract for the migrant transportation. I mean, you're talking millions of dollars wasted. We got to audit the whole thing, and I'm getting the red paddle again.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think I figured it out. If you switch your mic off when you're done speaking, I think that'll help. We're working through this. So let's, and I'm going to start with you, Brian, on this one.
Sure.
So let's talk about the Massachusetts exodus. Specifically, what current policy is driving high net worth taxpayers to flee? What will you do to reverse the tide, and will you repeal any taxes and cut any fees?
Yes, 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 yes. How about that? Look, I mean, here's the deal. Here's the deal. Like, I live in the business world. I live in entrepreneurial land. I deal with CEOs and founders every single day. And I can tell you the speed at which people and businesses are leaving this state is like nothing you've ever seen. Back in 2014, 15, 16, 17, we used to have like the new business development pipeline of all the companies that are coming here. You haven't heard a thing about that in years. There's 500 people a week leaving Massachusetts. Our taxes are too high. Our fees are too high, starting with electricity. And we have an anti-business governor that's making it hard to run a small business. I mean, unemployment insurance tax is $500 a head on average. That's 5 times what it is in Florida. So the answer is, to get this state moving again, broad-based taxes across the board. Roll back the income tax, go after all of those personal and business taxes that are driving up, because we've got to get this state moving again. This is not a state that should be 49th out of 50 in job creation. We should be in the top.
I think it's awful what's happened here in our private economy. As both of us mentioned, in Governor Baker's administration, hundreds of thousands of jobs were created. I was glad to be the Economic Development Secretary during the period of time. And the fact that we're at the bottom of 50 states in job creation in the last 2 years is shameful. We're Massachusetts. We have great companies that have leading positions in global industries, great communities, great leaders. It shouldn't be the case. And part of my campaign is a great future for everybody. You can't have it without a great economy. And one of the reasons I talked about going to 40 states in my business career is you learn, A, we're a special place, and B, we're not alone in this country. There's a lot of places to make a living and build a life. We have to have a competitive mindset. Beacon Hill doesn't have that mindset today. So we are in an affordability crisis around housing, energy, and taxes. Right, we have to address those. People leave the state because they can't afford to be here. We don't have a governor that's serious about the private economy. She's never spent a day in the private economy. We have to address that as well. So there's a lot we need to do here in Massachusetts to make sure we're a place that people want to start businesses and grow businesses, and we're a long way from that right now.
Is it on? Are you guys having fun? Yeah. You learning anything? All right, great. I know I don't want it to be too dry, but these are important issues. So here's one. We're starting with Mike this time. Would you support ending the right to shelter laws for illegal immigrants? Should all financial benefits be cut to these illegal immigrants? And where should they go?
Good question. Again, we have to declare we're not a sanctuary state. That will stop people from coming in here. We have to support President Trump's policies to close the border. That has to happen. We have to reform right to shelter and make it clear that it is for Massachusetts families that have fallen on hard times. We've gone a long way from that one. We have to address the Supreme Court decision, the Lund decision, and all local, state, and county law enforcement to work with the feds to get criminals out of our shelters, off our streets, and out of our state. There's a lot we have to do. We have to end driver's licenses for illegal immigrants, right? And we have to speak clearly on these matters. If you follow what Maura Healey said about this, okay, see if you can follow this. Years ago, she said she's proud of our sanctuary status. 2 years ago, she said she's not sure what sanctuary means. And last year, she said we're not a sanctuary state. If anybody can explain that to me, please see me afterwards. I can't make sense of it. Leaders have got to speak clearly. We're not a sanctuary state. Our state programs are for state residents, and we have to stop the spending and stop the madness.
Should all their financial benefits be cut? And where should they go?
They should be cut, and where should they go? It's a really good question. We've got to work with the federal government on that, right? For sure. And we have to start with the criminals, the violent criminals that are here. And again, the idea, these have been horrible incidences in these shelters. And what has Maura Healey said about these criminal incidents? Things will happen. It's not right.
Okay, thank you. All right, Brian, would you support?
Oh, absolutely. When I'm governor, day one, we reform the right to shelter law. We start with the following. Homeless veterans get first priority. Homeless veterans get first priority. I mean, we got veterans in cities like Taunton, where I met with the mayor recently, that are like last on the list for shelter, and you've got non-Massachusetts residents, you've got migrants getting those slots. That is not what this law was intended for. Maura Healey and her team have misused that law. That law was designed for Massachusetts residents who are legal citizens. By the way, it's been around since 1983. It's not a new thing. What it turned into in the past 3 years is a new thing, and there's a lot a governor can do through direct action, executive action. For example, the home base program, that's controlled by the governor. A Governor Shortsleeve would change those eligibility requirements day one, so if you are not a Massachusetts resident, U.S. citizen, you're not going to be in the home base program. Maura Healey has turned that from a $20 million program into a $100 million program of free rental vouchers. And if you give free rental vouchers and free food and free EBT cards and free health care, guess what? You have a lot of people that show up in the state. Let me stop. I'll yield my 11 seconds because you look like you have a follow-up question.
That's okay. So,
Just like a minute response.
well, you went a little long. We gave a little bit longer now.
You owe me 11 seconds.
That's what we're trying to do.
I'm trying to time my response. It's a minute.
It's a minute,
All right.
yeah. So, yeah. So nothing in life is free. We all
Nothing
know
is
that,
free.
right? So our state has some of the strictest gun laws in the US. Do you believe lawful citizens' Second Amendment rights are infringed? Would you push for reforms to restore those rights? And we're starting with Brian on that one.
Yeah, look, Maura Healey is running around with 135, which I hope is repealed, and I support the repeal. By the way, there's Representative Ken Sweezy in the back who just walked in. Ken, congrats! Thanks for being here. We're going to put you on the hot spot later. But look, Maura Healey's running around like she's tough on crime. That's why she's hiding behind that law, because she's going to be tough on crime. She has done nothing. She has done nothing in 3 years to make this state a safer place to live. She will not enforce universal background checks in shelters. They're doing Corey checks, which are Massachusetts only. They're completely useless for people that are here from Venezuela or Haiti or name your country. She won't do that. She can't find any money in her $62 billion budget to fund public defenders. So we've got criminal defendants being released into the streets. This was happening all summer. And at the same time, you come back to where her priorities are. She's got all the money in the world to run the home-based program to $100 million, but can't find money for those basic things. So look, I support the rollback of 135. We have enough gun laws in this state. We don't need any more.
Thank you. Mike?
I am for the Second Amendment, and I'm for the repeal of Chapter 135. Look forward to working with John on that one. And again, leaders have to speak clearly on this stuff. That's my clear point of view. Pro Second Amendment, pro the repeal of 135. And by the way, 135 should not have happened. The way it happened is disgraceful, right? Because the law got passed, all right, and John and others gathered all the signatures to put it on the ballot, and that should have stopped it. And what did the governor do? The so-called emergency preamble that made it active that day, right? I've talked about having a government we can believe in. It's one of the core parts of my campaign. That is not a government you can believe in, right? When this government refuses to honor the will of the voters and audit the legislature, when this government pulls tricks like that and thwarts the will of the citizens, that is not good government. So yes, that's where I stand on those issues. And I'm really particularly angry about the way this law was put into place. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm appreciating your clear answers, because I think everybody here wants to hear answers. They don't want wishy-washy, so keep it going. Crime is out of control, starting with Mass and Cass, with spillovers onto the South Shore communities, open air drug use, human trafficking, shoplifting, shootings, murders, rapes, etc. That's what we're faced with. What is your plan to make our city streets and our neighborhoods safe again? And do you support the National Guard coming to assist in this endeavor? And we're starting with Mike.
Well, if we needed the National Guard to be called up as governor, I would not hesitate to do so. I look at what Governor Newsom did in California. It was obvious the National Guard should have been called up. And for political reasons, he did not do that. But I would not have the same reticence. If we need the National Guard, I'd call them up. Look, a lot of this comes back to having sanctuary-like policies and people in our state that shouldn't be here that are causing crimes. And again, the fact that we've had horrible crimes in our shelters and a governor who says things will happen, okay, that's not correct. We have a mayor who is at war with the federal government on these issues. It's not right. Boston's a big, complicated city with real crime issues, right? She should be welcoming ICE to come in there and help get the criminals out of the city, but she wants to go to war with ICE. It's not right. And this Lund decision I mentioned before, where we need a law to have local and state and county law enforcement work with the feds, that's got to get done. A number of Republican legislators have proposed that for a long time. So part of it is immigration related. Part of it is the policies of local leaders like Mayor Wu, but we got to get after this one.
Look, when it comes to crime, I'll tell you this, if there's one thing I learned in the Marine Corps about leadership, it's about taking action. Leadership is about taking action, doing the hard thing when it needs to be done. It's not about ribbon cuttings and speeches. And you look at Healy, I mean, she went on WGBH last week and said that none of these people being rounded up by the federal government are bad people or criminals. 790 people with convicted criminals in other countries, in some cases this country, were part of that group that were arrested in June. I mean, these are rapists, these are murderers, and most of them have been in and out of our court system multiple times. We should be meeting near the courthouse door and deporting them at that point. So look, when it comes to leadership here would mean getting state government to cooperate with ICE, would be using the power of the governor's office to make those things happen. When it comes to Mass and Cass, You have a section 35 power as a governor or a mayor to basically put people into an institutional setting if they're a risk to themselves or others. You could clean up mass and Cass in a day if you had a governor or a mayor that wanted to do it using section 35. Put people in treatment, let them get themselves sorted out, clean up the streets. It's about leadership, and it doesn't take laws or legislation. It takes a mayor and a governor that actually want to fix things.
Okay, thank you. Shifting gears a little bit, would you follow Governor DeSantis's lead and end mandatory vaccines? How do you plan to protect our human rights to make our own medical decisions and maintain bodily autonomy? And Brian, we're starting with you.
Yeah, I've got three young boys, and they've all been vaccinated, so I support all of the, what I'd say maybe the legacy, well-established vaccines that people take when they're growing up. I think when it comes to newer vaccines that are untested, I'd be willing to let people make up their mind. But I think for, when it comes to my view on the vaccines that have been battle tested over years in this country, whether it's polio or whatever, I support people taking those, and certainly I have and my kids have.
So I guess what I'm asking is, they're forcing people to take vaccines. Do you believe in religious rights? Do you believe people should be able to decide whether they want to take a vaccine, or should it be mandated that they take a vaccine? I'm sorry if I wasn't clear.
Yeah, no, I believe in a religious exemption, and I believe that exists right now, so I would not support getting rid of a religious exemption.
You might talk to the guy out in Fitchburg. He would not agree with you on that. Sorry.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm not sure where we left it, but what I would say is that, for the legacy well-tested vaccines, I've done them, my kids have done it. For newer stuff that's untested, I think people ought to make up their own mind. Certainly, no one should ever lose a job for not taking a COVID vaccine, which was happening, in this state at a rate that was completely unacceptable in my view.
Look, I strongly believe in parents having choice for their kids, okay, whether it's on this, whether it's on schools as well, by the way. All right, we need more school choice in the state. I called on Governor Healy to opt into a part of the big, beautiful bill called the Educational Choice for Children Act. So I'm wary of any state law that takes parents out of the control of their kids. We do have to look at what is medically necessary, however, but in terms of religious exemptions, my faith matters greatly to me. The fact that I'm a father matters greatly to me. We got to have parents be in charge of their kids' lives, whether it's respect to their health care, their education, and lots of other things. I do worry that this has become very ideological on the part of the state. The parents know best in this regard.
Okay, thank you. All right, so Mike, we're starting with you. So speaking of healthcare, do you have any initiatives to make the Commonwealth healthier, thereby cutting medical costs?
I'd observe this about healthcare. It seems to be an industry, it's very important to the state, obviously very important to us as citizens. It seems to be an industry where no one's particularly happy, right? Everyone feels like they pay too much for too little healthcare. You've got doctors leaving the system, hospitals leaving money. It's become too government driven. Healthcare is now about half the state budget. So I think we have to look just like I looked at education in my career, look at the outcomes you want and direct state programs to those outcomes. So one thing that's very important is around nutrition and food. And we've got real food security issues in the state and a lack of awareness perhaps around what would constitute a healthy diet. That would solve a lot of things. Just basic education around nutrition and fitness. That's a root cause thing for a lot of issues. I remember a time in Lawrence Public Schools bringing physical education back into the curriculum, so getting kids moving and active again. We had kids going over, spending part of the day at the Boys and Girls Clubs in Lawrence. So at a young age, teaching young people about nutrition and fitness has to be critical. That's a root cause issue.
Look, when it comes to healthcare, the most important thing that families need and individuals need is access to a primary care doctor, access to a local hospital. We had 3 hospitals close in this state: Norwood, Kearney, and then the one out in Neshoba. Those 3 closed. That was part of the Steward disaster. Guess what elected official took more money from Steward healthcare executives than anyone else in this state? Can anyone guess? It was Maura Healy, and the number, if you look at OCPF, is like $60,000-$70,000. So you look at her lack of focus on that operation, which has resulted in 3 critical hospitals closing, and she's taken thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. So that's an area, where I think in those communities they're being hurt because you're not getting access. And if Maura Healy had been doing her job as Attorney General and as Governor, those hospitals wouldn't be closed. And by the way, You could probably have kept those hospitals open for the next 100 years for the $3 billion that she spent on illegal immigrant housing. I mean, think about it. The idea of those is we don't have money to keep them open, but we got all the money in the world to do other things. So I think with Healy, her record on that's been awful.
So, Maura Healey's climate change policies have been a total fail. From closing pipelines down to allowing wind farms off our pristine fishing grounds. Her policies are detrimental to local shores with dangerous debris washing up and many dead endangered whales. What will your energy policies look like, Brian?
Look, I got young kids. I care about clean water and clean energy and the environment, but we have to have policies in the state that do not drive working families out because they can't afford it, and do not bankrupt industries like the fishing industry. So I look at Healy's policies, the fastest growing part of your electricity bill are all of those state mandated fees. In my case, it's like $100 a month. I mean, that's $1,200 to $1,500 a year for the average working family. It's a ton of money. And I got people all the time that come up to events with their bill, and they say, why do I have an electric vehicle charge and a distributed solar charge and a net metering decoupling charge and an energy efficiency? What is all this stuff? Well, here, I'll tell you what it is. It's taxes, okay? It's $1.5 billion in the aggregate of taxes. And when I'm governor, we will strip every one of those fees out of your bill. The governor can do it through the Department of Public Utilities. If the legislature wants to run off and fund those things, they can do it, but they shouldn't be going through your bills because it's making the state completely unaffordable. I mean, we're at 34 cents a kilowatt hour. We're the highest in the country now, other than Hawaii, and Healy's policies are a big part of it.
She stinks.
Well, first of all, I would have an energy policy, not a climate agenda. Governor Healy has no energy policy. She has a climate agenda. Okay, here's two things we have to do and two things we gotta stop doing. First, bring more supply of energy into the state. She has bragged about shutting down natural gas pipelines. In fact, she said, remember, I did that. Governor, we remember. Every time we get a bill, we remember. So more supply of energy, like natural gas, okay? Secondly, embracing new forms of energy, whether it's next generation nuclear. There's a company here in Massachusetts developing fusion technology. I helped them expand from Kendall Square to Devons. They recently expanded to Virginia. Wish they hadn't done that. But more supply and better technology. Two things to stop doing. The net zero by 2050 mandate, okay? All that does is empower the bureaucrats to put these green gimmick charges on our bill and try to mandate the kind of cars we can drive and trucks we can drive and how many miles we can drive and how to heat our homes. Enough of that. And the second thing to stop doing is a hard pause on offshore wind. It's way too expensive, way too subsidized. And if we have wind turbines washing up on beaches and damage to our fish, it's hard to argue that it's clean energy.
Thank you. So regarding energy infrastructure and decommissioning, where do you stand on Holtec and irradiated water dumping into Massachusetts Bay? And why remove decommissioned natural gas pipelines from deep water ports, causing far more disruption than simply capping and covering? And Mike, we start with you.
So I'm gonna be honest, this is not the issue that I know the most about, those specific ones, okay? But we have to look at energy from a pragmatic point of view, okay? We want it to be abundant, we want it to be clean, okay? We want it to be cheap. Those don't sound like good things, for sure, okay? Energy's gotta be clean. It can't be doing damage to the environment, so we gotta take a hard look at that. Decommissioning, look, I mean, nuclear, I think, should be part of the energy portfolio going forward. Am I answering your question, am I missing it?
No, you are.
Okay, all right. But
Well, for example, we don't want radiated oysters.
Well, I don't want that either. I mean, I've spent a lot of time with folks in the fishing industry, okay? And you talk to them about the impact of these energy programs on their livelihood. That isn't right, right? We have to look after our small businesses. We have to look after our fishermen, that industry. But if we have an energy, a climate agenda damaging our fishing industry, we got to stop that day one. I will seek to stop that day one as governor. It just isn't right. Energy, again, ought to be abundant, clean, and cheap. And if we're doing damage to the environment in the name of a climate agenda and damaging our fishing, that's got to stop day one.
Look, when I'm governor on the gas pipelines, we will build the gas pipelines. I mean, Maura Healey was on TV last week complaining about the president turning off the windmill project out in the ocean. She said no one should restrict the supply of energy into this region. You know, cut over to her 5 years ago, gloating about stopping 2 natural gas pipelines. Those pipelines, if they were in place today, would be saving the average family in this state somewhere between $2,000 and $4,000. So we should build the pipelines. We should do it safely, but we should build the pipelines. And that is the source of energy that is reliable, that we can count. There's plenty of space for renewables, but offshore wind is the most expensive way to fund and to build sort of our energy infrastructure. And it's one of the reasons why our costs are out of control. I mean, Healy's Department of Public Utilities has also just recently effectively banned new gas hookups, which means you as a homeowner in a new home are going to be forced to go onto electric heat pumps. That will triple the cost of heating your home in the winter. It's insanity, and I'll change that when I'm governor.
Thank you. This is a hard question because of today. So conservatives often feel their values are ignored in politics. How would you ensure freedom of speech, protect religious liberty, and push back against government overreach in personal and cultural matters? And to and aside from that, I'm a Christian, and I feel like I'm under attack, and it's always okay for them to call me a racist. So, Brian, we're starting with you on this one.
It's a tough one, especially on a day like this. You know, when you look at someone like Charlie Kirk, who was so outspoken and so energetic and passionate in his beliefs. And by the way, he did it on university campuses, which are tough places to do it. I mean, when I was a ROTC kid on the Harvard campus fighting to protect the program in the 90s, when we were trying to get kicked off, it was not pleasant. But I tell you this, when I look out at this room, I am fired up. Because what I see is a lot of people that care, a lot of people are passionate. We got some candidates around. I see Ann in the back, I think a lieutenant governor candidate. We met some local candidates here. So what I would say to people that feel like your voice isn't being heard, that you're being shut out, is let's get involved. Run for the Board of Health. I was in Cohasset on Sunday morning with 2 candidates in Weymouth that are going to run, I believe, for the Board of Education. Someone will correct me. But that's what we got to do. I mean, if you feel the passion, you want to speak up, I think we got to get out there and we got to run candidates from the bottom of the ticket to the top of the ticket that aren't afraid to speak up. I'm not afraid to speak up. People in this room are afraid to speak up. And I think if we're out there running, there'll be plenty of people that maybe get a little energy and a little courage by seeing us all out running. So I'd like to see the ticket top to bottom.
I appreciate that, Brian. And Mike, and I appreciate an alpha male. Just saying, it's okay with me. Men can be men. They can be gentlemen. Open the door for me. I'm good with it.
So it's a really important question. I'm a devout Catholic, been a Catholic my entire life. My faith has motivated my transition from business into public service, the idea of having an impact. And I often feel like my government doesn't reflect my values, right? We have to have a governor that has a non-ideological approach to a lot of these issues, that speaks to our values, that reflects our values, and doesn't make people feel like their values are under assault. We don't have that today. If you look at Governor Healy and the fact that we have Democrats in every statewide office and every federal office, and virtually all the mayors, with a few notable exceptions, thank God, and our legislature, it is a left-wing government that in a lot of ways does not respect traditional values. And it's up to us, right, to fight for our values and preserve our values and help elect candidates that will do the same. So we need a lot more balance here in Massachusetts. I'm very concerned with today. We don't have a government that reflects our values and doesn't recognize, again, that parents ought to be in charge of their kids, right? The stuff that goes on in our schools these days, okay, are educated on topics they should not be touching. Let's teach the basics to our kids, right? That's how you create a world-class education system, right? But let the parents direct the values for their kids.
Thank you. So, the MBTA Communities Act, also known as 3A. I live in Duxbury. I'm vehemently opposed to it. I'm just putting it out there. So there are pending ballot initiatives to nullify, repeal, or reform zoning. Do you believe towns should be forced to comply with this unfunded mandate, Mike?
I believe strongly in local control. It's been state law since 1920 that all 351 cities and towns make their own decisions on these things. When MBTA communities was passed, we were still in office in the Baker administration. We said we don't like this. It's a mandate. Let's try to make it as flexible as possible for cities and towns. And what happened? We left office. Governor Healy came in. Attorney General Campbell came in and weaponized it. So we need new leadership in state government that recognizes the cities and towns don't work for the state. The state is here to empower the cities and towns and stop the mandates, stop the threats, stop the lawsuits. There are Republican amendments in the legislature now that would really help this cause, and we got to get behind those. So I do not support mandates and threats and lawsuits against our cities and towns. When I was a cabinet secretary, the best part of that job was traveling the state, meeting with local leaders, helping them get done things they want to get done versus trying to tell them what to do. Governor Healy and the Attorney General did not appreciate that. We have 351, all 351 get to make their own decisions on the stuff. That's the way it's got to be.
Look, I am the only candidate on this stage who supports a full repeal of the MBTA Communities Act. And by the way, I would welcome Mike to join me in calling for a full repeal tonight if he'd like to. It's a bad law. It's administrative overreach. It's a one-size-fits-all approach. We should not be telling small suburban communities that they've got to put 800 condominiums into their town center. That law doesn't respect local zoning, local infrastructure requirements, schools, water. So I call for a full repeal. I mean, Mike was the housing sector in 2022 when they put the regulations out on MBTA Communities Act. He called it good housing policy and good climate policy. I completely disagree, but I would welcome I would offer my time to see if he'd like to join me in calling for a full repeal.
Well, this is a Q&A and it's not a debate. If it was a debate, I would kind of love it, but you're not letting me do that tonight. So, all righty, thank you. This is kind of sad because tomorrow night, Diane DiZoglio was meant to come to Pembroke. I don't know if you knew that. Yeah, she canceled just the other day. So 71.5% of Massachusetts voters supported ballot question 1 regarding auditing the legislature. What are they hiding? How will you turn this into a reality? What other issues that crosses party lines do you support? Brian, we'll start with you.
Look, we should do the audit immediately. There's no excuse. And by the way, Auditor DiZoglio, she hasn't been able to audit the legislature yet because Healy will not stand up and fight for it. They're fighting her. But she did do a small audit of the Mercedes cab company. I'm not sure if any of you read this over the summer. This was a $6.8 million contract. And when she looked at that, what she found was millions of dollars of wasted money. You know what she said is the Healy administration, using the emergency powers, did a no-bid contract or a lucrative inside deal with a politically connected vendor. And she said, they picked the most expensive possible way that you could move people around central Massachusetts, which is black car, $150 a trip. I mean, the taxpayers are getting charged $150, in some cases to move migrants 200 feet across a parking lot. The auditor said if you'd use taxis, it would have been 50. If you'd use Uber and Lyft, it would have been 20. And by the way, the regional RTA out there, which runs empty buses up and down the highway all day long, they do it for free. One small contract, millions and millions of dollars. We also just saw an audit of Mass Health 2 weeks ago, in which Mass Health fraud is up 100% year on year. It was a 1,500 sample set they audited, and they found $4 million of fraud. So we got to audit the legislature, we got to audit every single agency in state government. We'll find billions of dollars in savings.
Well, just quickly, what Brian said on MBTA communities was not completely honest, but today's not a day for Republicans to be challenging each other of all days. But on your point about the audit, 72% of the voters said they want the audit of the legislature. I voted for it. I was one of the top donors to the ballot question. It's got to happen. And this is a government that lectures, not listens. They say, we know better, right? We should say, we the people demanded the audit of the state legislature. It's got to happen. And look, I mean, look what's happening now. Legislative leadership is saying no. They have no capacity to say no. The voters have spoken. The Attorney General refuses to sue the legislature to make it happen. The governor refuses to speak clearly. And I've said this before about Governor Healy a few times in this forum. She refuses to speak clearly on issues like St. Clair State and other things. So the governor should be up there saying, folks, this has to happen, right? And by the way, as a cabinet secretary, I lived with audits of our agencies periodically. That's how government should work. And we never thought it was an impediment to getting the people's business done. So accountability and transparency. And by the way, the other aspect of accountability and transparency is Governor Healy said she'd open the governor's office to the public records laws, and that has not happened. She was out of state 76 days last year and didn't want to tell us where she was. So having a government we can believe in will be accountable and transparent, and audits matter.
Thank you. So if each of you can name one other issue that crosses party lines that you support. Is there one? I know, well, that's how you're gonna get elected, because you gotta get everybody on board.
I wouldn't mind banning cell phones in school. That's been floating around somewhere.
Okay.
I'm not sure actually who proposed it, but I got kids, and I think it's a good idea.
Okay.
May not, I don't know if it's popular with this crowd, but I do think things like that, I don't know, that sounds like common sense to me when you see how out of whack it's gotten.
How about you, Mike?
Well, Sue, in my experience as a cabinet secretary, so much of state government's not ideological and not partisan. You just have to have the will to get things done and get out and talk to people and do things. Governor Healy doesn't take that approach. I think she sits in her office on Beacon Hill and tries to tell us what to do. One issue that I was proud to see the Democrats support was retaining MCAS as a graduation standard. The unions went against them on that one, so that perhaps is one issue with this immunity. But again, on that one, okay, we don't have a high school graduation standard, and Governor Healy's taking way too long to come up with one. So that's one example I can point to out of the last number of years where I felt like there was some alignment between the parties on an issue. But a lot of this work is not partisan, it's not ideological, it's roll up your sleeves, get out in the cities and towns and get stuff done. And that is not the approach to the job that Governor Healy takes at all.
Thank you. Mike, congratulations. You've just been elected the governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. What's your first move?
I've got a number of first moves. So first move is to declare we're not a sanctuary state. That's going to happen. On day one, also say we got to get the audit done. On day one, direct my team to cut taxes and cut spending. On day one, develop realistic strategies to address our affordability crisis. On day one, get the best minds in the state together and have a real strategy for public education in the state. Okay, leaders on Beacon Hill like to say that we're number one. Guess what? Our kids' scores have been on a 12-year decline. The last 12 years of education in Massachusetts are more spending, less accountability, less innovation, less choice, and worse results. I'll get the best minds in the state around the table because I've done the work in Lawrence and done the work in Boston. We have to look after our kids' future. It's not right. So there's a lot of things to do on day one. But that's some examples around a government you can believe in, a great future for everybody, and a state we all can afford to live in. It's going to be a busy day one, Sue.
Sounds like a great day one. So Brian, we're like in a time machine. It's 418 days in the future. You've just won. What are you going to do?
Look, day one, we are gonna end migrant shelter excesses. I mean, that program's out of control, end sanctuary state status. So as a governor, change those rules. You make sure the home-based program is no longer used for folks that are not legal residents. You can do that as a governor. Day one, you direct the Department of Public Utilities to strip all those state fees out of your bill. You can do it as a governor. Day one, state police, state agencies sign 87G agreements. They start cooperating with ICE, because if we're cooperating with ICE, we wouldn't have the issues that we're having in this state, and a governor can absolutely do it. And day one, we go to war on cost. I mean, our state budget has grown by 50%, 50, in 6 years. Our population is flat, and our tax-paying population is declining, okay? Our spending's up by 50%. There are billions of dollars of opportunity. So we gotta get spending under control. It starts with getting the migrant shelter crisis behind us. It starts with ending sanctuary state policies, and it starts with reforming the home-based program. And then you gotta do every agency, cost center by cost center, line item by line item, department by department, to take out cost and get state government back oriented towards what we can afford.
Thank you. So, Brian, our state flag was adopted on March 18th, 1908. Florida and Massachusetts are the only two state flags which prominently feature a Native American. Minnesota was the third until 2024. Should we keep or change our state flag?
We should keep our flag. We love that flag. Look, I'm a Marine. I mean, I served. I know how important flags are. They have a lot of symbolism. There's thousands of men and women from this state for hundreds of years that have served under that flag. And that flag's got a great story. I mean, that flag's the story of our creation. It's the story of the fight for liberty. It's the story of the role that Massachusetts has played in history around being the beginning of many of these things. So I wouldn't change the flag. I wouldn't change the state motto. I think that we have a great flag. We ought to celebrate it. But I'll tell you what, spending $100,000 on a commission to come up with those three designs is a colossal and epic waste of money. And by the way, I said that to Matt Stout from the Boston Globe today, so you may see that tomorrow. I just think, I mean, this is another example of the state spending money we don't have on things that don't matter. It's a complete waste of money. Keep the flag. The flag's great. People have served under it for years. We gotta respect it.
Keep the flag. It's our flag. We've had it for a long period of time. And by the way, we've talked about today, we have an affordability crisis in Massachusetts, a crisis of government accountability, an education crisis, an economic crisis. But leaders in Beacon Hill want to talk about the flag. I mean, come on, give me a break. And yes, they are spending $100,000 on this commission. If they were to change the flag, it changes everywhere. What's that going to cost? So no, the flag reflects our state and our history, and we should keep the flag. And we should send a message to Beacon Hill. We want you focusing on real issues for real people, not symbolic issues like the flag in Massachusetts. So keep the flag. And it's a great example of government that is deviated from common sense. Government should focus on real issues, real opportunities, real challenge in the state, not symbolic things like the state flag.
Okay, this is my final question before we start going to the collected questions. So, Mike, did you vote for President Trump in the last election? Why or why not?
I blanked my ballot in the last election. I've been open and honest about that. I'm very pleased today. We have a president, however, that's closed our
So
border.
blank means you didn't vote for him, correct?
Right. I certainly didn't vote the other side either. But I'm pleased we have a president today that's cut the budget, that's secured our borders, cutting taxes, supported Israel, has an energy policy that makes sense, so I support that. Look, my political allegiance is clear. It's to Republicans in Massachusetts. And I was proud to serve as finance chair for the party, chair of our legislative support fund, the single largest donor to the Republican Party, its causes and its candidates the last 2 years. So my allegiance is clear to Republicans in Massachusetts. And when I'm the nominee of this party, we'll have a choice between a Republican nominee that wants to work with the president to move our state forward and a Democratic governor that built her career suing Donald Trump and opposing everything he does. And that'll be the choice before the voters. I think when things happen in Washington that Maura Healey doesn't like, she tells her team, get me on TV. I would say get me on a plane and go down and work with the president and his team to help move our state forward.
Thank you. Are there questions from the audience that have been written out that need to be Oh, I'm sorry. How rude of me.
All right, Emma.
Come on, you can
Yeah,
stand up to me.
okay, sorry. All right. Look, yeah, I voted for the president, and I support the Republican ticket from top to bottom. And let me tell you how I vote, okay? I vote number 1 as a Marine and number 2 as a businessman. What does that mean? It means I vote to secure the border, I vote to cut taxes on working families, I vote to deregulate the economy so small business can thrive, and I vote to cut wasteful spending out of the federal budget and the state budget. So I support the ticket. And if you look at what has gone on in the last, well, I guess it's 8 months now, I mean, the border's closed, right? The president has closed the border. And who would have imagined this state would be a border state? But it became a border state. I mean, under Maura Healey, $3.3 million being spent every single day. And that will end when I am governor. It will end in the migrant spending on the shelters. It will end in the home base program. And let's hope that border stays closed.
Thank you. I'm trying to collect the questions. So, here we go. So we'll start with Brian on this one. Are any of you aware a peer-reviewed study came out a few days ago by Kevin McKiernan confirming DNA contamination in both shots, that's the COVID-19 shots, I believe, and SB40 promoter in the Pfizer shot. As governor, how would you act on vaccine-related injuries?
When it comes to newer vaccines which are not tested, I think that's up to people. People shouldn't be forced to take those vaccines. I certainly wouldn't be firing people from state government like happened in this state, during COVID. When it comes to the more established vaccines that have been around for 50 years, I support people taking them. But I think we got to study those things. We got to learn more. I mean, every day and every week that goes by, like the study you mentioned, we're learning more. And I think it's important that when it comes to some of those newer vaccines, people have the right to study it, make their own decision. And I believe in the religious exemption that should continue in Massachusetts.
I always find it kind of funny when Democrats claim to be the party of science. And then things like this happen, right? I mean, if these are vaccines doing damage to people and Democratic politicians are trying to mandate them, that isn't right. Like, look at the scientific impact, look at the physical impact of these things. And if they're doing harm to people, we gotta get after that. We gotta stop it. We certainly shouldn't mandate it. So I'm in favor of having some choice in this regard and just looking at the facts. And again, talking about, common sense. Common sense ought to be rooted in facts. If we have vaccines that are damaging people, we should stop having those vaccines, and we certainly should not be mandating those. And again, whether it's on taxes or energy or education or healthcare, I worry so much that our Democratic politicians lead by ideology, not by facts and results. And my approach as governor will be to lead based on the facts and results and get things done in a pragmatic, common sense manner.
So, Mike, we'll start with you on this. So, I know I've been in this room on other events. There was a young man down in, I think it's Middleborough. He got in trouble for wearing a T-shirt that says there are only two genders. And it speaks to DEI and all of that. So where do you stand on DEI? Is there a place for it in government and schools?
There's a place for government to say no to DEI. Start with that. I mean, come on. This is governed by ideology. It's not appropriate. I am a strong believer, as strong as anybody, in equality of opportunity. Let's start with that. But no more of this DEI madness. And the fact that kids are getting in trouble for wearing a T-shirt in school, I mean, give me a break. But where are the free speech folks on this one? So no, this is a much too ideological approach to governing that isn't right. So no to DEI. No to getting in the way of someone's free speech and the way they should express themselves. And by the way, on the gender issue, I am firmly against boys playing on girls' sports teams. All right, and one of the great joys of my life as a dad was coaching 39 of my kids' teams. Okay, I've got a daughter and two boys. I coach my daughter in so many sports I can't count, right? The idea that she'd have boys playing on the team against her, no, we cannot have that. And again, leaders have to speak clearly on these issues. No boys on the girls' teams, no DEI.
Look, boys should not be playing girls' sports. Boys should not be getting kicked out of school for having a T-shirt on. I think this is not leadership, like it's insanity, and it's got to end. When I look at the things that have gone on there, I think it's not the way we should run a state. Run governor. Let's get back to merit. Well, let's get back to merit. Let's get back to people being in jobs because they earned those jobs. And I think the attack on free speech that we've seen is awful. By the way, look at Harvard University. Alan Garber, the president of Harvard, has admitted that Harvard really lost its way around not managing anti-Semitism and also free speech, basically blocking out center voices, certainly conservative voices. So that's all got to end. I think it's nuts, and we just got to get back to a merit-based system. We got to get back to free speech. And when it comes to the schools ought to be focused on math and science and physics and teaching English. The schools should stay out of politics, and so much of this tends to revolve around what's happening in schools. I think they ought to get back to basics.
So here's another question from the audience, and it touches on a serious issue in Duxbury. It's just come up out of nowhere. So they want to build a battery storage facility in Duxbury. So hundreds of battery storage facilities are currently in the works across Massachusetts and getting very little press attention. How do you feel about these projects, for or against? Ryan, you'll go first.
Well, here's the deal. You know why they're building battery facilities? Because they figured out that you can't call the sun and tell it to shine, and you can't call the wind and tell it to blow. Okay, that's the issue. That's the issue with the renewables. Once you get above about 10% renewable, those are non-dispatchable sources of energy, right? The wind's not always blowing, the sun's not always shining at you. So as a result, what we're seeing with this huge and mightily expensive push to do more renewables is that they're going to put these battery farms in. And when you look at the cost of offshore wind or solar plus the battery farms, what you're going to see is it's 3 times the cost of other sources we have right now. So I think this is just an example of more cost, more load on the average working family, because it's all going to be paid for through our bills. All those facilities being built to back up renewable energy sources are going to end up in your utility bill, and we're going to continue to have working families in this state that wake up at the end of the month, they got $150 of charges in their bill. So I think we gotta turn around.
I'm against these facilities. They speak to three issues. One is having a climate agenda, not an energy policy. We need a real energy policy. Secondly, you've got to respect local control. If a city or town does not want those, they shouldn't have them. And third, we have to look at affordability, right? So we're creating an energy environment here that's not affordable, it's not clean, and we're forcing things on our cities and towns. And when you have a governor that respects local control, that wants to have a more affordable state, that's gonna have a real energy policy, not this ideological climate agenda, you're not gonna have these things. And I thought it was interesting, Sue, you said these things are not getting a lot of attention, I think is what you said. They should. And the community should speak up about this. It is not right, but again, it's having a governor that does not respect the fact that all 351 cities and towns should make their own decisions on these things and get back to basics like that.
Okay, so some say for a Republican to get elected in Massachusetts, they have to make some concessions to win. Do ya?
I will not make any concessions on my values and the core part of my platform and policies. Okay, you've got to work with the other side to get things done. But by the way, in this state, okay, 65% of the voters are independent. It's only 9% Republican, but 3/4 of the state are not Democrats. And I firmly believe our government today does not reflect our values and does not reflect the common sense majority. So I will not compromise on no sanctuary state. I will not compromise on no taxes. And we need the need to cut spending. I won't compromise around some aspects of energy and healthcare and other things. I'll be clear about my principles, right? And you gotta be clear. You have to work with the other side to get things done. But by the way, I think the policy platform I've outlined about a greater focus on affordability and opportunity and better government, that's gonna appeal to a lot of people, right? There's a whole set of things 95% of Republicans agree on. Guess what? I think the independents want that too. Doesn't the independent voter want better schools, right, and safer communities, and less taxes, and less spending, and more accountable government? I think everyone wants those things. So that's how I'm going to win this election, by appealing to common sense policies that have broad appeal across Massachusetts.
I think we gotta be bold and we gotta be clear. Look, when I am running against Maura Healey in 8 months, I mean, we'll be talking about cutting taxes, stripping all those fees out of utility bills, ending the migrant shelter crisis, and getting spending under control. And we can do it. I think this is the kind of election that we had back in 1990, when people said, "Oh, the Republicans can never win. You know, Bill Weld's never going to win." But guess what? It was the sort of feeling out there that things were going in the wrong direction. And I think in this state today, across the spectrum, Democrats, Independents, Republicans, I think there's a sense that this state is going the wrong direction. Go back to 1990. Not only did Weld win that election, he brought with him 16 state senators, and we went on to cut taxes 41 times in his first year, okay? Those are all things people said couldn't be done, and they can be done as long as we got great candidates top to bottom, and we're bold. You know, we cannot be Healy light. We gotta be bold, we gotta talk about cutting taxes, cutting spending, ending the migrant crisis, and refocusing on working families in the state to make it a great place to raise a family. I know I can do that.
Well, I appreciate that, and I think that's why a lot of people in this room are a little bit jaded, because we feel like we don't want to be fooled again. We want real Republican leadership. So we have a broken legal system. How would you change this so the criminals are not let back out on the street to commit horrible crimes? Like what happened to, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna say her name right, but Irina, the woman down in North Carolina. So I guess that goes to our judicial system. Do you feel like we have the right laws, or is the problem with the judges? And Mike?
Well, the governor gets to appoint judges. I'd appoint judges that are concerned with getting criminals behind bars, right? And not focus on this ideology of supporting the criminals. We have to address, again, this Lund decision, work with ICE to get criminals out of our system, right? That has to happen. We have to eliminate cashless bail. I mean, give me a break. If you've been arrested, you gotta pay real bail, right? That's an issue. So no, we have to have a much tougher, pragmatic approach on crime, not an ideological approach. And by the way, that's where I think the majority of Massachusetts residents are. Sue, in your last question, there was a presumption that people don't want to have Republican policies. I looked today, the last time this was polled, voters 2-1 said they want the flag, keep the flag. 72% wanted the audit, right? That there's a strong majority for our basic principles. A strong majority don't want boys playing on girls' teams, right? There's a very pragmatic majority of this state, and we got to reflect those values and reflect those policies. And part of that is having communities be a lot safer and getting tougher on crime.
You look at the young woman in New York that was killed on the subway last week. The guy that killed her had 14 outstanding connections, convictions in and out of jail every time being let out. If we ended cashless bail and we got serious about keeping people in jail who should be in jail, like that particular individual, these things wouldn't happen. So you got to end cashless bail. You got to get serious about keeping criminals in jail. You got to get serious about doing universal background checks in those shelters, and you got to get serious about meeting criminals when they're in the court system to deport them at that point. So there's a ton that a governor can do there, and I think on areas like cashless bail. I mean, Michelle Wu and Maura Healey have been awful on these things, and we're all paying the price for it in this state every day. It's made the state less safe, and it does not have to be that way.
Here's a quick one. Do you think that they should have in the high school the physical fitness standard test, Brian?
Like a run or a.
Like in gym class, you used to have to take the national fitness test. Do you think they should bring it back?
In the Marine Corps, we used to do a 3-mile run, 100 sit-ups, and 20 pull-ups. So that would be fine with me. We'll see how many can get through it, but I would support that.
Mike?
I would support that as well. We have to have a real focus on getting into kids fit. I saw this during my work in Lawrence Public Schools. I saw it in my work in Boys and Girls Clubs of Boston. When you get kids moving and have them be a lot fitter, they're better able to learn. All right, they're going to get along with their peers better. It's much better for their future. So yes, I support a much higher level of fitness in our schools.
Okay, and one last question. It's about the mental health in the state of the people, in the drugs that the kids are on, and the adults are on. Do we have a problem with that? And how do we address the mental health of people in this state? I'm not sure who we're starting with, Mike.
It's a really important question, Sue. Again, we got to listen to the parents on this one, right? If the parents need help in that regard, we got to help them out. I think we do have a mental health crisis in this state. And I think we're spending too much money in healthcare in the wrong areas. We have to have a strategy that says, what are the outcomes we want? We want people to have strong mental health and strong physical health. But we're spending as a state, I think it's close to $30 billion on healthcare today. Yet we have these gaps, right? The life expectancy of a Back Bay resident is 92 years. The life expectancy of a Roxbury resident is 69 years. It's an enormous difference in life expectancy and trajectory in a community that's a mile apart. So we have to really get at real outcomes around mental health and physical health and get serious about it, and not just keep funding the same bureaucracy and getting the same poor outcomes.
We definitely have a mental health crisis. If you go to Mass and Cass up in the South End in Boston, and you look at the folks that are living out there, open air, drug use, people living in tents, I mean, there is an existing structure to solve that. You can remove people, you can put them into an institutional setting, you can use your Section 35 powers to do that, and that's what we should be doing in areas like that. We clearly, when it comes to open air crime and drug use in Boston, those are people undergoing mental health crises, and there's a process. They go in, they have 90 days, you get treatment. But I think we gotta start there, because I think Wu and Healy's resistance to getting those sort of folks off the streets and into care is creating a situation where we're all less safe. So I would start there, and then more broadly, we've got to help everyone with mental health. But I'd start with people that are clearly out in the streets and are frankly a risk to all of us.
Thank you. I think this is going to be the last question. I'm going to do my best to read this. It's regarding the Sagamore Bridge. So we're in talks of replacing the Bourne and Sagamore Bridge on Cape Cod. Some residents who live in the area have their homes in jeopardy because of eminent domain, but their property will be used to store equipment and other wasteful purposes. As governor, what will you do to make this project beneficial to all without destroying people's lives or preventing waste, fraud, and abuse? I'm sorry, I can't read the rest of it, but I think you get the gist of it. So how would you handle the bridge situation?
Look, I support rebuilding the bridges. There's a process, there's a public process for eminent domain. What's important is that people are treated fairly, they get fair value, and I would fight like crazy to make sure people get fair value. At the same time, we gotta rebuild those bridges. There's hundreds of thousands of people that go over them every single day. And I think they're a critical part of our economy in Plymouth County, over the Cape, over to Bristol County. So I'm a supporter of them moving through it quickly, but certainly being thoughtful, due process, and fair value for people who are affected.
I do not support the taking of land by eminent domain for that purpose. Property rights matter in this state, in this country. We should not be taking people's property. We've got to find a way to get this bridge project done without taking people's homes. And by the way, this starts with having a governor that will have a productive relationship with folks in Washington and get the funding we need for the bridges. Because right now, I think President Trump and his team don't look at Massachusetts as a reliable partner on a whole bunch of things. This is a very expensive project. But think about this, we have a Democratic governor, Democrats in every statewide office, an all Democratic federal delegation, right? Is that our best face to Washington to get the funding we need for these bridges? Absolutely not. So it starts with having a governor that can work with President Trump and get the funding we need, and also respect for property rights. There's gotta be another way to do this without taking people's homes.
Okay, thank you. Is there a glaring question that I'm missing from the audience? Do we feel pretty good? How about this? Right here. This is my final. And that's what I tell the bartender all the time too, okay? Gun control sets limits on ages. I can't read this.
Yes, gun control sets limits on age and past record, etc., but there is no recognition as to the drug effects on mental stability. How would you address this request?
Sorry, the drug effects on mental stability, meaning people that have mental stability issues should not have guns. Is that the gist of it? Yeah. No. Let's stop going after legal gun owners, okay, that deserve the right to have their guns. Let's stop coming up with new laws to restrict those people, and let's address real issues like people that are mentally unstable having guns. I think that's the gist of your question, sir. But that's what we have to get done. And things like this Chapter 135, it doesn't address that, does it? Right? It's more harassment of legal gun owners. So we got to respect there's a whole bunch of people that want to own guns. They're entitled to that legally, and they're responsible gun owners. Let's stop harassing those folks, and let's address real issues like having mentally unstable people own guns.
Yay, okay, so that,
Yeah.
cut you off.
I won't take it
Are you
personally.
taking it personally?
Look, we should not be harassing, honest, law-abiding citizens. And I think when you look at what's going on with 135, Maura Healey's hiding behind that. She wants to be tough on crime. She wants to pretend she's tough on crime. She's done nothing in 3 years to make this a more safe state. Her policies, whether it's the lack of background checks, whether it's migrants running amok in the streets, have made us less safe. So I don't think we need more gun laws in this state. We got to be very careful to make sure that people that have mental issues don't have guns, and we probably all agree on that. But I think that we don't need more gun laws. We should enforce the laws we have on the books, and we should stop harassing law-abiding citizens who are out hunting and doing other things.
Try this again. So thank you. That concludes the Q&A. We're going to have final remarks. And then if you look around, you'll have your ballot. Okay? And then we're going to ask you to complete that. You might want to wait till their final remarks. You might come up with something new and exciting. And then we'll let you know where we stand with that. So, Mike, you started. So, Brian, why don't you go first with your final remarks?
By the way, I need to grab a ballot. I don't have one. I want to make sure I get my vote in. Look, first of all, thank you all for being here. Thanks for the organizers. Thanks to Representative Sweezy. It's just awesome to see the energy out there. I'm a proud Marine. I'm a proven government reformer. I'm a successful business leader. I'm a devoted father of 4 boys. I'm the only candidate in this race who voted for the president I'm the only candidate in this race who supports a full repeal of the MBTA Communities Act. I am the candidate that will end the migrant crisis once and for all and the billions and billions of dollars we've spent on it. I'm the candidate that will end the MBTA Communities Act enforcement, frankly, and what that's doing to small cities and towns that can't afford it. I'm the candidate that will get spending under control. Spending in the state is completely off the rails. I have experience going into an agency that had not looked at its costs for years and finding incredible ways to save money. I mean, when I was at the T, we had a $300 million deficit. And my first week there, I asked a few of the folks on the team, has anyone ever looked at the Verizon wireless bill? And the answer was no one had ever looked at the bill. I bet you look at your bill every month. Guess what? We had a $3.5 million bill we did an audit. You know, a third of those phones hadn't been used in years. That was the first $1 million we saved. So I'll tell you, when it comes to state government, you've gotta go through every single part of it. I've done it. I know we can cut the savings. And I know that when I'm governor, we will not only get spending under control, but we'll go after a ton of the spending Maura Healey's doing right now on things like the migrant shelter crisis that could be better spent elsewhere. We gotta put Massachusetts residents first. For what we have spent on the migrant shelter crisis, direct and indirect, you could rebuild the Sagamore and Bourne Bridge 3 times for that cost. So look, I'm asking for your vote. I want your support. I am the candidate that's got the grassroots support. We are raising the most money in this race. We've outraised Mike almost 3 to 1 in terms of third-party donations. We're going to continue to do that. It's an expensive race. I know we've got the support from donors. I know we can win it. I'm asking for your vote and your support at the convention. And thanks again all for being here. Really do appreciate it.
Sue, thank you so much, and thank you everybody. Let me just say that the nominee of this party for governor must commit to declare in no uncertain terms that we're not a sanctuary state, to cut taxes, spending, energy costs, and regulation, to demand accountability in state government, including the audit of the legislature, to stop the threats and mandates and lawsuits against our cities and towns, to get this economy moving again, and to have a public education strategy predicated on accountability, innovation, and choice, where the parents are in charge. I know I can do these things. And here's something else I know I can do. I can win. Because to unseat an incumbent Democratic governor is no small task. Even for the governor we have now, it's going to require someone with a track record that I built up over a dozen years, a government reform and pro-growth agenda, where I helped turn around the worst performing school district in Massachusetts. We cut the bureaucracy by 40% and brought those kids a much better future. Implemented pro-growth policies at the state level as the Economic Development Secretary. 300,000 jobs created. Helped kids in Greater Boston achieve a better future. That is a track record that will appeal to the majority independents that may want to get rid of this governor now, but have to be sure the person they choose can do the job on day one. I'm the person who can make that case. I announced my campaign in early April. We put together the best possible team one could put together for this race. I've committed $2 million of my money personally to the race. We have the highest cash on hand in the field. This is a campaign built to win. And we're running hard from day one to the very end because the future is so important here in Massachusetts. We're in desperate need of new leadership in the corner office. And I know based on my experience in business and local government and state government and education, I've got the relationships to compete for, win, and do the job. It is really important we get rid of Maura Healey. It's really important we nominate the person that can win, and that person is me. I really enjoyed tonight. Great questions, great discussion. Thank you for the folks for organizing this. I love being in the middle of a Republican crowd because, again, this is a team sport, and we all need to work together to make our party strong and make our candidates competitive and deliver for the people of Massachusetts a government they can believe in, a state we all can afford to live in, and a great future for everybody. Thank you all very, very much.
So, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to cast your ballot, which should just take you a second. Then we're going to collect the ballots. We'll let you know. We'll tally because this is just one day of voting. And we can do it. But I am so encouraged to see so many people in this room, and we're still over a year away from the election. So let's keep the momentum going.